created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
And so we're back to our season 8 spectacular singing. Today we are going back to the bel canto, and we have from Maestro Bellini one of a very interesting piece of music that Katia is going to be sharing with us. We are referring to the part of Elvira from I Puritani.
Vieni all'amore, vieni all'amore.
And it is very interesting. The first thing that I wanted to share with you, and hope, Katia, that you agree with me. Um, the role of Elvira in I Puritani, well, maybe first things that we need to say is that I Puritani is not as very well known as it is Norma, for instance, and maybe even La Sonambula. So I Puritani like falls very, very behind in the rest of the catalog by Maestro Bellini. And let's go back to the fact that Maestro Bellini really detested singers. So he chose to sing because this part that we are going to be talking about today from Elvira is the most delicate part of Elvira in the complete opera. Because, for instance, if you remember in the Vieni, Vieni fra queste braccia, Vieni, Vieni fra queste, it's like way too much voice, and it doesn't even seem to be from the same opera, as we are going to say, to hear qui la voce. You see, qui la voce, Vieni, Vieni fra queste. They are like two opposite sides, and the soprano has to go high, which is usually not a problem, except when you have to put too much pasta on the voice, and Elvira has to put way too much pasta many times along the opera. But we are going to address the only part where Elvira is very, very delicate. I was just sharing with Katia right before the beginning of today's program that for me it even seems like if Maestro Bellini composed in a way like it could be Mozart, delicate lines, taking his time, uh, any excess you can perceive if you don't if you don't provide the right sound to quella voce, then you immediately say something is wrong. And those are my first thoughts when I think of Qui la voce, along with the passage that we are going to, full of ornaments at the end because Qui la voce is going to be
Thanks.
short. But what do you think when it comes to your mind? How did you find this aria, or did you find this piece for singing? Was it suggested by a teacher, or how did you start working on this one?
Yes, it was a song that my teacher asked asked me to sing, and thinking about this contrast between some other heavier parts and this delicate song, I remind also Violeta, because in the first three acts you don't jail, but it's a character with a lot of strength and emotions. And in the last act, when Violeta is dying, after that develop of voice and energy, you have to start with something like "Adiós del pasado," and make your voice starts to float through the air. Well, it's complicated as a character, as a complete character. It's totally challenging. I mean, singing this in a concert just as a single song, it's not the easiest thing on earth, but it's easier than singing the character complete. Definitely.
Yeah, and also you just mentioned something else that I wanted to address. I think one of the most complicated things for this part by Maestro Bellini is um, how do you achieve the correct sound for this piece? Let me bring another example like for Maestro Mozart. When you think of Voi che sapete, because we describe it, Voi che sa, because if you go full voice, Voi, something is not working. So you cannot say qui la voce because you say it is way too much. So it is like this floated sound that has to go through all the bars and convey this sensation of despair, as we're about to see, of being sadness, but too much despair, and it sounds like Puccini. And if you are not in despair, nobody is going to believe you that you are at that state of mind. So, and there is a change. Not only you have to start very soft, moving along the notes, but when you but you have to get ready that you don't get tired, that you don't get through everything before you go to the ornaments. So at the end, there is a preparation. The is a complete thing that you have to do. Because I know that it could be for any soprano is I will go fast in the slow part, nobody will care. Because nobody cares because they are waiting for the ornaments. But if you do that, nobody's going to notice the contrast. And the contrast is important. So what are your thoughts when you have to sing together its aria and its a more speedy part like a cavaletta or a cavatina with ornaments when you're changing those moods because Bellini likes to do that.
Yes. Well, I think that it's complicated to approach to a song like this one because you have to balance several things to make a good song. Of course, you need a good technique. You need to use very well your diaphragm and to yell and to sing loud in certain point of your development. It's easy, but to make something as fancy as bel canto is, well, that's big words. So you have to use your air in a very clever way to move your voice, to move your sound through this air. Don't get exhausted because here, actually, the ornaments are not the complicated business. It is the line. It is to hold the idea, to hold the fanciness of this performance. So that's the tough part of singing Elvira.
And you know, one thing that people that singers like to do and that I really don't I'm not I really can't understand why many like to study or to do it that way. They say, okay, let me put that on the screen because I cannot read it either. So you start saying qui la voce sua soave. So they first think, okay, here is my note here. It is below my central do, so that means problem. The following is a problem. The following is much closer to my central D, not a problem. I go back to low notes. I have a problem. But of course there are notes. But when singers like to keep too much, when their mind is focused on the note, they forget the breathing. And what I like to say is that maybe it's like you're mounting. Maybe if not, I just forgot. How do you say montaña rusa in English?
um, I got it.
Let me look for that one because I think it's going to be a good example. Roller coaster, of course.
Thanks.
Um,
Yeah.
so when people think of the of a roll, it's when you start thinking, it's like going on a roller coaster. The roller coaster itself is the diaphragm and the breathing. Yeah. So you mount on it, and sometimes you go low, and sometimes you go high, and sometimes it can be tricky. But when you start thinking of only the notes without the air, it's like trying to run after the roller coaster, and you're never going to get it. The roller coaster, the breathing, the column of air is going to transport you wherever you need to go. Of course, there are arrangements that you need to do with the sound so that you reach the notes. But if you only think of qui, 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 if you start thinking of what is the sound that I'm going to do qui, instead of thinking of the air, on how it is going to evolve in qui la voce sua suave. If of course you can work on the pitch, but you have to work on the complete phrase, because if you only think of isolated notes, it's never going to work for the bel canto, because the bel canto has to be homogeneous. If it were only chopped notes like staccatos or this sort, of course you also have to keep the same level of brilliance, brightness in the notes, but at least it is chopped. But when you have a continuous um number of notes, and they are legati, you have to think of how the phrase is going to evolve. And for some reason, that's going back to my comment, I don't know why singers like to think of notes, but never think of going into the roller coaster so that the diaphragm transports you wherever you need to go.
Yeah, sometimes I try to make my students understand that we have at least two different ways of reading a score. And about pitch, you can see notes that are down, some others higher, and we have this move up and down like a roller coaster you just mentioned. But you can also read one note behind the other and the other and the other. So if I start with this phrase, sol, la, si, mi, the color might change a lot. If I read like sol, la, si, mi, do, one in front of the other, and so on, sol, la, si, mi, la, sol, sol, fa, and it sounds closer. That's the idea. And I also work with them. Well, we built a song with several and different steps, but one of them is to sing just with the vowels of the text, and that helps you a lot to create a single line. We are, and then you can place the other letters and your text and your phrase. It's not chopped.
Because I know we have mentioned it a good number of times. You say qui la voce, oh, trouble, che, suave. Then there is a very lovely pause, and I would like to mention here the role of the pauses here, or of the silences, as we have also mentioned, because it's not really a pause, but it's not really a silence. It's part of the music itself. But when Maestro Bellini said, "Okay, here you have a silence after la sua suave," this small pause, this small silence means something. It's like you're recomposing yourself and say, mi chiamava, then there are more silences, e poi sparì. But always in the same mood of being like fragile, like being, oh, this is really hurting me, without turning it into a Puccinian drama. Still a very delicate way of expressing, but it has to sound nice, and it has to sound believable, because if you say qui la voce sua suave mi chiamava e poi sparì qui giurava e per fedele qui giurava, it's like repetitive and it's boring. So you have to put something of your own soul in there so that people believes that Elvira is actually suffering.
Yeah.
If not, people are just, okay, qui la voce sua suave te chiamava e poi sparì, ta ta ra, ta 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 ta. And working of certain syllables, that's what makes this part believable. Qui giurava e ser fedeli. Quil giurava, repetition, e poi crudele, then e poi crudele. I'm going to highlight it on the screen. Yeah, there it is. Because Maestro Bellini was not very generous in doing it in the low register of the soprano voice. Poi crudele, this first part of the poi crudele.
It
And
is pretty.
there are much nicer. You would rather have an octave higher, but it's not. So how do you just suggest that people work on this part when it is preferable to be much higher than it actually is?
Well, I try to concentrate in keeping my low notes with a high impostation, and that allows me to attack the next part when I have the C crudele after the ornament. E poi crudele, and it feels closer when your low notes keep this idea of a high impostation. Your distances feel smaller, feel closer. That's what I try.
And also going back a little to the sounds that sopranos use here, we're also exchanging some ideas during the preparation of the program that usually sopranos who go for this having this when they are having their own recitals, they are usually light sopranos, not coloraturas, but usually light sopranos. So which means that the voice seems to or has little pasta and it is very thin. And they have the voice thin and they look at the score and they make it even thinner. And when they make it even thinner, it's like listening to a baby girl of 12, 13 years trying to sing this one. And of course, the sound is not good. Of course, yeah, that's what makes it difficult because if you have a pure lyrical soprano voice and you go full for this, it's going to be too much voice. You have to take out some pasta so that it sounds floated and believable. But if you're a light soprano with a small voice and you take away more pasta, then you will not have a nice sound for this and people will barely listen to you. So light sopranos should go, if not trying to compensate, at least trying not to take out more pasta
Exactly.
of the one they already have.
Yes. Our sound is light enough to face this kind of areas, so don't take your pasta off. You don't need to, you don't have to.
But the other thing is that usually, if anyone is listening, or if you have no, you're familiar with the soprano ligeras, the soprano leggere. Um, One of the main differences between the coloraturas and the soprano leggere is that the soprano leggere are not that high in pitch. And since they are not that high in pitch, and the following part that we're about to arrive tends to be difficult for them. So what they do again is that they take out the pasta so that they can make the ornaments brilliant, and the total result of this, the introductory area and the ornaments at the end tends to be a disaster because a light voice at the beginning, and then since the ornaments tend to get complicated, they take out more pasta and the ornaments sound childish. And the overall result is horrible. And that's why many people really don't like Elvira. And maybe at this point, many people is going to hate me for my following comment. But that is the reason why the version of Maria Callas for this is horrible. Because if you listen to her, she takes away too much pasta, and so she's left with a part of her voce di testa, only with that because she's lost all the she takes away all the pasta and the support of her voice, and the sound is not nice. It sounds more like a squirrel, and
Yeah, I was about to say
it
that.
shouldn't sound like a squirrel. And she
No.
says like that instead of having yeah, like that, instead of having a full sound of the natural voice that you have. So if you have to do something that sounds that horrible, it means that you shouldn't be really singing it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you stole the words from my mouth because if you have to do something extraordinary and beyond your skills, it's not for you. If it doesn't feel comfortable, if it's not good for you, if it's not natural, it's written for somebody else.
Absolutely. And so, why don't we go to the part of the ornaments, which is the one that everybody is expecting, because she continues suffering. Ama I più che a sorte insieme, ama I più che a sorte insieme, nella gioia, nel sospir, arrendetemi le speme o lasciatemi morir. Because remember that in Italian and in this stage of the opera, people liked to say lasciatemi or lasciatemi morir, lasciatemi morir. There is even aria from the Baroque with that name, rendetemi la morte or rendetemi morir. So rendetemi la speme. So it is not very different from that one. And I am going to scroll very fast because this score is from the complete opera, and from the complete opera, there are things happening between this first part and then the ornaments that everybody is expecting. Then even notice we are moving to Allegro Moderato, and we were not in the Allegro Moderato previously. Um, and we start con estasi. Look at the expression, con estasi. Vien diletto in ciel la luna, tutto tace intorno intorno. So now that we have talked a lot about the preparation of the voice, how do you like to attack, to go for your first phrase now that you're starting the ornaments?
I already start this E flat thinking of the F that we have ahead. Because if I start thinking in this B flat, okay, I know that I don't have a chest voice as a lyrical soprano or as a pinto soprano. I know that, but my color is gonna change, and it will be complicated to reach a high pitch if I start very settled down in this part. I prefer to have a higher imposition, and I'm still using pasta. Vien diletto di cielo, tutto tace intorno intorno, and then I dance with the notes.
And it is very interesting the overall, I would say, sensation, the sensation, the emotion, the way Maestro Bellini carries you into this part, because even if you don't know the words, this is one of the melodies where you can play with the sound ta ta da ta 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 da ta 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 da ta ta da ta 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 ta, because Maestro Bellini wrote it that way. If she says viene, viene, bien diletto, it doesn't matter because you can play with the melody, and when you can play with the melody, it's much easier for people to remember. But because we're just coming, we are the public, of course. If you are the one in front of the public, you have to work your way around differently. But also, you have to somehow stay in control because even if you now showed us that you already started with the ornaments, you are not Olympia, you are not like me, so you cannot go to the stratosphere and start doing things way much higher than required. right? So with that in mind, how do you how did you suggest that because that is very typical of the coloratura sopranos of high sopranos, and we mentioned especially in the case of Beverly Seals, so she said, oh no, it is below my central do, so I am going to sing it, not even a third, I am going to sing it a fifth higher than read. Because anything below my high C, it's sorry, below my central do is way too low. So I am going to, everything is going to be interpolated a fifth higher so that I am comfortable. Uh, and I know that you are more comfortable higher. And of course, you say, why sing in an F when I could do a G, or why sing in a G when I could go for an A, or even why would I go for an A when I can go as high as a D? But that would deform the style of the composer. But still, there are way too many sopranos doing that. So how do you because it's not only it's a matter of understanding that yes you have the possibilities, but you have to adhere at a point to the score. Uh, is this a lesson that you teach yourself every day and you say, no, Katia, forget about going way too high all the time?
Lucifer, go back. uh, well, you know me and you know my voice, and feeling comfortable, I would say that my central pitch it is a central G. Anything below that G, where you place the clef, for me it's like, ugh. But I love music and I respect music and I respect composers as much as possible. And I think that I have understand the idea that in this part of my voice, I'm not gonna sound as a mezzo or as a contralto. It doesn't have to sound like cavernous, but I can make it in a very decent way. Taking this part, the bien diletto, I'm not sounding like bien di because it's not even my voice. It sounds forced, and it will make that the rest of the music feels even more complicated. So I try to sound impostated with dignity, and that's it. But no, if I don't have the need, I don't change pitches.
And in particular, this first part, now that we're starting with the ornaments, Maestro Bellini goes, well, you made the clarification. Since my voice is of a tenor, for me it's the lower register. As you explained, anything below your central G is
It's in the
wait,
hell.
no, but from the perspective of a tenor, this is low. For you, it's super low. But Maestro Bellini likes to go low because if you take again a look at this one that I am highlighting, he's again requesting ornaments around the central C, which is not very common. And that at a point, it's like, I'm not sure because no one can tell. We don't have Maestro Bellini here. He could have written it higher, but he chose Elvira to do these ornaments around the central. Maybe he thought this is excessive to sound like Olympia singing way too much higher. So maybe he wanted to show that Elvira is way much more human. Because we also have to say that when sopranos are required to sing that high, either you are math like Lucia, either you are imitating a bird like the ones that we have brought in the past, or either you are a mechanical machine like Olympia herself, or either you're imitating a bell. But if you notice, all of them are not human, really. So my
Yeah.
thoughts are that Maestro Bellini said it is much more human to the ornaments around these zones. Maybe those were his thoughts, and maybe that's the reason why he didn't go too much higher in the sky to keep Elvira still like a human being and not like a bird, not like a machine, not like anything else.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, Elvira is not a nightingale. So, yes, I think that that's a good point of view. It's interesting. Yet she stays human, and the real truth is that we have to thank Mr. Um, Bellini because even these low pitches are not like very settled. There are pretty quick notes. Fin che spunti, bien delay, and you just touch this softly and go higher. So yes, there is way to sing these pitches, and there's no need to change and to sing something higher.
And the first, if you could say, high note that you are required to sing, it's coming. It's coming here, but it is not too high. Again, it is starting like very moderate. And the way it is written, I would say it's very, mm, I'm not sure how to say, it's not very ambitious, not very demanding. It's like, from my perspective, it's like he wants to keep Elvira still in control. He will give her much higher notes ahead, but so far it's like, hold on, we are going to get there. Only hold on.
Yeah.
Do you
Yes. Here in this point, you are just warming up your voice for what's coming ahead.
vieni, vien, tipo 620 sul mio cor. Again, in the low register, it's wrapping up in the low register. If I was if I was a soprano, I think I would detest Bellini so far for doing that to
No, it is completely balanced. Because as a singer, it doesn't matter if you have a light voice, because I think that I have probably one of the most light voices I've usually heard. Um, Even when you have a high voice, to be singing in the middle high part, the entire time of the song, it is exhausting. Probably not because it's not part of your natural sound, but it's exhausting to don't moving your voice, to be in the same place. It is exhausting. Your pitch uses to fall, and it's tired to be heard too. So
and
I think that we are smart enough. We should thank those low notes.
yeah, and I think we should also in the future for other pieces that we bring to the programs discuss it because I was just recalling because yesterday I recorded the video blog entry for that is going to be published in 2 Wednesdays, and I addressed La Traviata, Giulietta, and Marguerite from Faust because I was making reference to the fact that they sing a coloratura or ornamented aria. They have a lyrical aria and they have more drama in their pieces, and the soprano has to go through all the range of emotions and colors of her voice, right? So that's what I was addressing back then. And I was explaining also that people say, it is for male voices, either baritone. Oh, the baritone had to reach a G, which is very high for a baritone.
It
So, oh,
is.
the baritone had to reach a G. But people just say the G, forget about the G. He had to come from M, F, and fortissimo, and continues and continues and continues. Of course, by the time you reach the G, the baritone is completely exhausted. So
Yes.
when you keep too much focus on a given note, you forget everything that comes behind. If you're required to sing continuously on a given part of your voice, it is usually tiring. Of course, it depends on the level of the orchestra and many other things, but usually, if you're required, let's go back to the comment of when we talked about Canio. The problem with Vesti la Juba is the part where he has to be continuously singing with F and above. Ridi pagliaccio, all that continuous number of notes is what tires the tenor. And for other tesituras, it's the same case. If you keep demanding for them to go excessively on a given volume or a given range of the voice, it is always tiring. So yeah, we appreciate it when there are pauses, when when the composer says, okay, there are a couple of bars when the orchestra or the piano is going to be alone, then you go back so that you can rest. But the Maestro Bellini in the coming part, in fact, does the opposite. Because if you take a look after the affretta, and you have a small silence here, O Arturo mio rierio caro alla tua Elvira, then you have no pauses again. So from the perspective of Maestro Bellini, you don't breathe. So after your myocor, you have to think, oh, you don't use air for breathing. I don't know, you're going to get the air out of your cells or from somewhere else. Because Maestro Bellini, and I was mentioning because this, for people who don't read music, this is not a long pause. This is not a long silence. This is just
No, you have to be breathing through your skin.
like a plant absorbs the light of the sun, the same way you
Like a
have to
frog or
absorb.
something.
Yeah, because you really have to be, and when you do it, you also have to be very smart because we have mentioned it also that there are these singers that you hear them like, and that is a horrible habit. And I know that you teach your students to not do that because it is horrible to see someone on stage and "I Provence and Mare di Provence, the corte cancelo." No, 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 no.
No.
It's absolutely horrible. But Maestro Bellini gave that to you. You are going to have to sing without actually breathing. So again, you have to plan ahead. And how would you go for this part where you have little room for breathing?
Okay, I try to don't use my whole layer because when I found the first little pause, I just take a little bit of air to go ahead with the next phrase, don't using my whole hair and just taking a little bit of air again and so on. And nobody noticed that I breathed.
And that is another trick. You are not forced to breathe where the composer wrote that silence. You need to breathe where, of course, when you need it, when you have analyzed everything and said, I'm going to need to breathe here because otherwise I'm going to run out of air in the middle of something and it's going to be horrible. So you look for your chances for those breathings. Usually the fermatas, the calderones are usually good places to do that because
Yes.
where that's where you are going to invest more time, and since you are investing more time, people do not notice that, or that you immediately have to do some other ornaments, as it is the case here. But still, I think it is very cruel on the side of Maestro Bellini that besides giving you very short pauses or silences, uh, I know this makes sense for the melody, but this doesn't make sense for the way humans breathe, to be
Yeah,
sincere.
and it also says sotto voce. When you are singing sotto voce, you use more air than singing louder.
Contrary to what people may believe that, you take less breath because you're singing
No,
softer,
no,
it is
no,
the opposite. And thanks for bringing that up. People say, uh, Turandot is getting tired of Leonid son notre. No, that's very natural. If you're a dramatic or a spinto soprano, it will go very natural because that's your common volume. But when you ask her to go to something softer, lower, that's when more control is going to come here. And that brings us to this part again to the thoughts of Bellini saying, hey, I am going to give this series because it's going to be a number in the following 5 bars that I am going to
Jesus.
have to the effect here, and maybe people, if you know this part, uh, in fact, this is one of the most horrible parts that Maria Callas does because every time she's ascending, the voice sounds more squirrel. If you could use
Yeah.
squirrel as an adjective, it sounds squirreler every time she goes from the F to the G, and then to the A, and then to the B. Because, and as Katia has mentioned a number of times, it is very important that your voice sounds homogeneous. You're just scaling in the pitch. But if, as you scale, your voice starts being deforming and you start sounding like a girl of 15 in the G of 13, in the A, a girl of 10, then you're doing something wrong. And that's going to end up damaging your voice because it's clearly that you're doing something here and you shouldn't be doing something here. It's like you're strangling your own throat so that you can produce a higher note with less pasta. And that's not the way it works. It should sound clear, clear, clear. You're ascending, but just ascending with the same amount of pasta, tan, tan, tan. And that's usually where most sopranos, not only Maria, but this is exactly the part where most sopranos fail.
But if you use too much pasta, then you start to make your voice heavier enough to don't let you attack the higher note that comes next, and your pitch starts to get lower, and it sounds terrific when I have heard some versions that and they're not reaching the note. Oh Jesus, stop.
Yeah. This is the part where you usually say, please, ladies, stop it, enough with
Yeah,
the
cut it
disaster.
out.
Yeah, this is
And if you are thinking something like, well, you go and do it. Well, I have.
you signed for it and you said you were singing it live. Okay, now you're going to do it. But
Yeah.
I don't know if from your perspective, and provided that you are a soprano, if there is something you can suggest for sopranos to not go to either of the two extremes, not sound like a squirreler as you high, or that you have too much pasta that instead of sounding and ascending, it's like it's sustaining you from the feet, and instead of going high, it's like taking you this, and instead of going high, you go you go low, oh, oh, oh.
So you sound like an exhausted squirrel.
Yeah, like an exhausted squirrel. So how do you suggest that people, sopranos, can work on this complicated part?
uh, Probably the wiser way to attack this kind of passage is to focus on the first note of your scale. We have E flat, F, G. And if you descend naturally, because it is requested in the scale, if you move your pitch down, I think that the voice will be using pasta naturally as it requires, but don't give pasta. So there are some activities for children when you see only the points, and then you have to draw the lines to connect the points. Well, that's the way that I um, attack these phrases or this kind of ornaments. If I focus on the highest note of each one of the scales, my voice will take pasta as it descends, but I'm not giving pasta, not an extra one. And at the same time, that allows me to get to the next higher note uh, easier, not feeling that I'm lacking of highness enough to have the correct pitch. I don't know if I'm explaining it right.
You know that when it is explained, it is always very easy.
It is! You already heard me!
Because also something that we didn't mention, it is not only that you are required to be an squirrel after each group of notes, but also that Maestro Bellini wrote it the most difficult way, which is in a descending way. Because you're starting high, descend. You see, it's like I start in this. If it was a stair, you are here, descend, next descend, next descend. That's the way he constructed it, because if it
Yeah.
was the other way around, it would be much easier to start
Yeah,
here,
it is easier
climb
like in
here.
other cadences that we descend, but we also ascend note by note, like part of the scale. No, in this case, we have to jump.
And this is like if Maestro Bellini had said, okay, lady, if you want to sing my Elvira, you really have to understand your instrument. Because if you
You're
don't
gonna pay for
understand,
this.
if you don't understand your instrument, you're going to be in a very complex situation at the final part of my innocent Qui la voce. If you started Qui la voce suave, then
It is tricky because you don't know what's coming
yeah,
next.
because when you know what's coming and you say, how am I going to prepare jump, descend, jump, descend, jump, descend, jump, descend, and you still have to keep the same color because we are reaching the highest note that is required for the soprano in this part. But many times, when the soprano uh, alla, because it is always the same voice, by the time they reach the second I mean here, the soprano is already tired.
Yes.
So dreaming of singing above the high C becomes a nightmare because you don't have a voice. By that time, you are so tired. That, yeah, exactly. That's how it sounds.
Here in Mexico, we say, ya estás pidiendo esquina.
Yeah, but by that moment, the public, instead of being impressed because hey, the lady is going to show what she's made of, you say somebody save this lady because lady is about to suffocate. It's clear that she's not going to reach her note. So I really don't know. We have said that when you study, when you warm up your voices and you work on your vocalization and your exercises, unless you have a very solid D or even a D sharp, you shouldn't be trying this because you're not going to make it.
Yes. It has to be, well, not in the middle of your register, but definitely you have to vocalize higher to feel this part simple. Yeah, that's true.
Also because you are required every time you jump into one of those steps of your jump into the scale, descent, jump and descent. Every time you do it, you're required to do it for a very small amount of time. So that also means precision. And
Yeah.
to be a squirrel, a precise squirrel is very difficult. You
You have to
choose.
be a good squirrel.
You have to be a very good squirrel. So you can choose. I can assure you that 9 out of 10 recordings that you can find anywhere, 9 out of 10 fail miserably in this part. because you
Yes.
say it is by a soprano ligera, soprano leggera. Okay. She doesn't have enough pasta, so she tries to put pasta here, but by the time she reaches this part of the ornaments, she runs out of voice, she's out of pitch. No. This one, oh no, this one no, really sounds like a squirrel. She hasn't even reached the B, and she's already out. And
Yeah.
you really can look for many. I was telling you that I can't even recall a version of any soprano that I listen to and say, this is the one.
No, it's not very common
No,
to find
because
a good opera. That's the truth.
yeah, because if I think of this, I say, no, well beyond her league. This one, no, well beyond her league. This one, she doesn't have the right technique for
No,
this.
they usually scratches the note. That's the sensation. I'm scratching the note after the descending. I scratch the high.
And it's horrible. Well, from the side
Yeah.
of the public, but I know that many times people are not very educated and give an applause to almost anything. But really, it's horrible when the sopranos, instead of singing a note right in the note, they are just like, like my cats, you know. That shouldn't be the case. But well, that's what Maestro Bellini wrote. So he said, okay, let's make their lives difficult. We have to admit he's making their lives difficult. But after requiring the sopranos to go higher than their high C, the final part is like, I would say, modest in a way.
It's easier. It's chiller.
I mean, the most horrible part, the soprano already did.
It's
So
already good. Yeah.
after that, you can just wrap up. But this leaves like the sensation, like from the side of the public, since the soprano just scratched the note, instead of singing it well. But by the time she reaches the end, you say, "And where is my high note? Lady,
Yeah.
impress me. Where is my high note?" You reach this final part like you can barely stay in front of me, but it is like the having this horrible and not having added a final powerful high note at the end leaves the sensation that something is missing. Or what are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
It's something that often it doesn't confuse me because I'm used to sing Maestro Mozart, but it's something that in the bottom of my heart makes me feel a little uncomfortable to don't wrap up with a high note. It feels weird for me. So yes, I have the same sensation here. It's well, I'm not ending with super high note, but well, in the other hand, is that you already scratch notes. So thanks God you're not ending with a high note after that.
But I don't know. I know a couple of versions where the soprano chooses to get rid of the ending, come up with something. Either they add a cadenza or a small group of notes and end with a usually a high C, if I remember well. I'm not sure if it is usually a high C, but they usually end with a high note, like trying to clear the past of the previous five verses.
Okay, I didn't make it,
Forget
so I'm
about
gonna.
that. Just pay attention to my final note because this one is fun. But I think that maybe Maestro Bellini could have given them uh, a high note instead of, because again, if you take a look at this, again he's requesting them to, yes, go for a note, but then start descending. And the final word, al amor, gives this sensation of incompleteness. Bien al amor, l'amor.
And
And yeah, that's it. Al
so
amor. So I can understand from that perspective why sopranos add a high note at the end. But I think they deserve it only if they sang it well without sounding like a squirrel.
Yes, that would be the condition.
So if you were not a squirrel, then you have the right to add a high note. But if you did something horrible, don't try to erase your sins by singing a high note. That could be the
Yeah.
expectation. Any final thoughts, Katia, for anybody who likes to approach this piece of music?
Well, yes, it is. It is a very beautiful song. It's complicated. It's challenging. It's interesting. Um, don't force yourself to do something that is not comfortable for your voice, but still can take parts of this like an exercise, and it would give you good results.
Because several parts of the score, like these jumps on the stair and descending, look pretty much like the exercises you do when you are studying singing. So you would
Yeah.
say, if you studied that sort of exercises in singing, why can you not do it for a given piece of music? If those were
Yeah.
part of your exercises, that means that you were really never comfortable in doing that because you were just supposed to apply it to this score. But if you're falling into these problems, then means that you really didn't grab how to make a good placement of your voice and ascend of descendant required. Next one, ascend or descend of required, and keep the same color and keep the same sound. It means that from my perspective, what it really shows is that you have something unresolved in your voice.
That's right.
Well, with that being said, I would like to thank you for having followed us on this episode of the Spectacular Singing. Any final thoughts, Katia, for wrapping up?
If you are studying this song, if you are finding it complicated, just try to do something different that feels natural for you, that helps you, and enjoy because finally music works for that, to make us happy.
Well, thanks everybody. Thank you very much, and see you in a month.
Bye bye.
You can follow our channel for the latest updates and more content. Opera will love singing, in just one word. Link in the description of the episode.